Ikenfell is a game about relationships. Relationships between siblings, between friends, old and new. Relationships between the past and the present. I should never forget the past, but it should not shackle you down either. Ikenfell is an indie game through and through, created by a small number of people, touching topics that would never pass in the AAA space, with some shortcomings that come from the limited scope. But any misgrievances are more than made up for with heart. Chevy Ray Johnson was the sole developer, lead artist, and head writer. They had help with animations, writing and sensitivity, sound design, and the soundtrack was done by Ivy and Surasu with Sabriel Agustin, along with various performers. Published by Humble Games, you can find Ikenfell on most stuff. I played it on Switch. And I love indie games. I love being able to count the creators. I love when small teams are able to tell deeply personal stories. I love when every aspect of a game feels like it was lovingly crafted by just a couple of people. Everything feels raw, like I'm looking at a reflection of those who made it. Ikenfell is a 2D, turn-based strategy RPG. You explore the school, talk to NPCs, fight enemies, and, most importantly, pet cats to heal and save. Everything is pixel sprite-based. When exploring the overworld, the characters have chibi-esque sprites, dialogue bubbles have more detailed portraits, and battles have full-body sprites with medium details. The art style is good, but not noteworthy. Every area has its own unique feel. All the characters and most enemies are recognizable. The battle animations are fun to watch. My biggest complaint is the art direction of the overworld sprites. The chibi characters always looked a bit weird to me. As you play, each area of the school is basically a dungeon, filled with new types of enemies and new types of puzzles to solve. Sometimes the puzzle is get past the enemies. Sometimes there are sliding blocks. Other times, buttons that open new paths. None are revolutionary in RPG dungeon design, but they really don't need to be, especially since the combat is so fun. Every enemy is walking around the overworld or dungeon that you're in. Touching them transports the players to a grid. Each fighter is placed in a battle queue. When it's their turn to go, they can choose to walk some number of spaces and then do a move. Moves are largely attacks, but there are some healing and status moves. And the best part, each move is performed by doing a Mario and Luigi-esque timed button press. To attack or defend, you need to press the button at just the right time. Learning this timing is a fun minigame in and of itself. Each move is timed differently, especially so with the player characters, and perfecting this timing is key. The enemy attacks vary a bit, but a lot of them can be categorized. Some enemies jump on you, some throw something at you, and while they might bounce a couple times more or take a second longer to spin the item around in the air, you can develop a pretty good sense when to block pretty easily. Despite this though, there were some moves that I just couldn't get the hang of. It was really frustrating knowing certain attacks would just always hit. But that was just a couple of enemies, and there are a lot of enemies. Despite only one person making all of them, there is a surprising amount of enemy variation. Every area has a whole host of new monsters to beat up, all with wildly varying designs. Towards the end of the game, there are more palette swaps, but they're usually paired with a truly new one. All in all, the enemy design never got dull, and the bosses dispersed throughout each chapter were all unique and fun in their own way too. The combat is always really fun. It's just, maybe there's a little too much of it. Especially later in the game, they just take too long. There's a little too many of them. I find myself grinding levels just to make the fights go by a little bit quicker. And even then, the later ones still took a while. Luckily, the battle music is so good. So the OST was in part written by the people behind Steven Universe, a show I have not watched and know nothing of the music therein. But I really like the music in Ikenfell. The battle themes are all great. The Ikenfell grounds theme, and the main theme in general, always managed to soothe me whenever I stepped outside. Many tracks do this newish style where they combine real instrumentation with chiptune melodies, a style that I adore. Many managed to give off this oddly nostalgic vibe, like it was from an old RPG from decades prior, while simultaneously staying modern. But where the game really stands out are the tracks with vocals. There are 4 of them in total, and they are all great. The first track to have a vocal version, slight spoiler, is The First Time You Fight Gilda. It's a great little pop tune. The lyrics do a great job describing her as a character. It might be my favorite song in the game. Piano is one of my weaknesses. It's also super distracting the first time it plays. Maybe it's just one of my quirks where I have to pay attention to the music, but the addition of lyrics really threw off my battle timing. I found I had to force myself to ignore this great song so I could actually play the game. And this happens for every piece with vocals. You're given a great song while simultaneously being told to ignore it. And the songs are very good when you do stop to listen to them. Each vocal piece accompanies a character, and the lyrics do a great job of describing them and how they fit into the larger plot. You just have to stop playing to actually hear it. Speaking of plot, Ikenfell starts out with Meriti. Merit? It starts out with Meriti heading to the titular magic school looking for her sister, Safina. She learns she's got this new type of magic, meets up with Safina's friends and classmates, and tries to find out what Safina got herself into this time. And like I mentioned at the top, it's about relationships. It's about how Safina, in her reckless nature, affected those around her. It's about how we see ourselves, and about how we see others. How sometimes we need to let the past die. Kill it if you have to. But how it can be just as dangerous to forget that it happened at all. Of course, the story itself is pretty baseline, clearly inspired by other magical school media properties. The true thematic heart is driven by the characters. Mid-development, Johnson got help from 3 others to assist with writing and sensitivity, and it shows. Everyone feels real. Every player character, every villain, every major NPC, each are driven by their own hopes and dreams, their own fears and weaknesses, and they are all driven by their queerness. Almost, if not every character in the game, is LGBTQ+. Some are gay, lesbian, bi, multiple are non-binary. It's unclear if there are any trans men or women, but I wouldn't doubt it. And it's not just representation for representation's sake. Queerness is a part of each character. It motivates their decisions, it colors their past. And it does so without making the story about being queer. It's a game about relationships. Those relationships just happen to evolve well-written queer characters. Not being a queer person myself, I can't speak on it from a personal perspective, but I do think the team did a great job representing the culture. I just wish more of that work extended to race as well. Now admittedly, it's difficult for me to read race when the game is using pixel art. The promotional art gives some skin tone variation, but really aside from the couple black player characters and few black NPCs, which is truly great to see them there, it's mostly just shades of white. 1 or 2 may have been Asian, but the rest were assuredly not. Nobody Hispanic, nobody Pacific Islander, nobody Native American, so on, so forth. It's such an easy slip-up, but it's also really disappointing to me. Now, I'd like to give the benefit of the doubt that they had a good reason to only have white and black characters. And again, it is truly great to have black characters that are both playable and pivotal to the story. But they did so much work to represent the LGBTQ+ community. That work not extending to race just bummed me out a bit. It didn't ruin the game for me. In fact, I only realized it while I was writing this review, but it's still a downer. All that being said, I truly love Ikenfell. Indie games like The Binding of Isaac, Outer Wilds, Shovel Knight, Celeste, games with small teams that tell their own unique stories are truly amazing. Ikenfell fits nicely into this category. The story and characters are really the selling points, with really fun combat being a great added bonus. Overall, if I had to give it a score, I would give Ikenfell a whole lot of cats out of 10. So, why didn't it work for me? One of the truly best aspects of Ikenfell is how well written every character is. Everyone is dealing with their own hopes, their own dreams, their own traumas. Everyone is managing them in their own unique way, and I was able to relate to each of them, at least a little. And that's great. Fully realized characters are the backbone of a good story. But I've got this quirk, this problem, where if I relate with a character a bit too much, it's too much for me to handle. On a character-by-character basis, it was fine. Nobody in the game was a reflection of myself. But as a group, well, there's this optional boss I'm going to fully spoil. Spoiler warning for one of the game-ending bosses, post-game bosses, ending bosses. There's this haunted mirror in a hidden bathroom. The room dressed with blood and bone. As you touch the mirror, your party is whisked inside. One by one, each character is met by their echoes, the representation of their deepest fears. Stacking them all up in a row, it was a punch right to the gut. Of the 6 fears, 4 really resonated with me. Meridi's echo says, "How can I expect to live up to others' expectations if I can't even live up to my own?" Patronella's, "I'm worthless, and I hate myself. I hate how I look, how I act, how I speak. I just wish I wasn't me." Rooks, "I push everyone away because I don't think they really like me. I'm unpleasant to be around." And Gilda, "I just want what others have. I'm jealous, angry, spiteful, and utterly embarrassed about it." The game may as well have been talking about me. It was tough reading these one after another. Thoughts that I currently deal with on a near daily basis put on a platter for me. But then you beat the boss. Or in my case, hit the win battle button, shut up, it's hard. And you're given their resolves. Meridi's, "I'm proud of what I've accomplished in the face of a world that would see me fail." Patronella's, "I tell myself I'm worthless over and over, but those I love do not believe that, and I trust them." Rook's, "My friends value my company, and don't always expect me to be perfect. I can return that love." And Gilda's, "I envy my friends, but I'm also proud of them. They rely on my strengths more than I know." It was hard enough reading a list of my own fears, reading how these characters have grown past them harder so. Which leads into the broader personal issue I had. I'm just envious of everyone in the game. It's a game about relationships, and I just don't have any. I never have. And watching that kind of stuff is tough, you know?
What is it like to be loved and so adored?
Well, if you made it this far, thanks! I hope you take the time to appreciate those around you and go out and play Ikenfell, if you have the chance. It's a very good game, all things considered. I'm at Mario Waith on all my social hubs, although I don't use Instagram anymore, and I barely tweet anything. Maybe go to my Tumblr? It's not that bad there nowadays. And while you're here, if you'd like to, rate this video, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment telling me why Gilda is the best character. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed. See you next time.
Someone who's got nothing to show for. If I should lose